welcome one and all to the first installment of the 2025 Critical Conversations series. This is the second time we've done this. First was during the inaugural edition of the Wakpa Triennial Art Festival. And in this case, this particular series of 4 conversations is meant to serve as not only a preamble to the festival, but also a platform for engaging ideas and invoking thoughts for the purpose of informing the work that not only the staff of Public Arts in Told, but also the co-curators of the Wakpa Triennial Art Festival. Before I get too far, my name is Mukherjee. I'm Executive Director of Public Arts St. Paul, performing at his first public-facing event. I'm also the 51-year-old in denial about his fading eyesight. Next time we should do a tablet. I'd like to welcome members of our board who've joined us, including new members. And I mentioned the co-curators of the Wakpa Triennial, and they are, to my left, Angela Two Stars, and over there in Crimson Plover, Bob Cozzolino. Not only are they commissioning the artworks for the festival, but they're also leading the ideation for this series of critical conversations. And when I mentioned invoking ideas and bringing to the surface perhaps things that we hadn't considered and things that might be very material and important to the Wakpa Triennial in 2026. To that effect, we've done something perhaps unusual, which is we've not determined the subjects, the topics yet, to the third and fourth conversation. The second one we have, and that one is slated for either 24th or the 27th of March. You'll soon be able to set your calendars. I think we're going to determine by the end of this week. But for numbers 3 and 4, we've decided that we're going to determine the subjects based on what emerges from the first 2 conversations, including the Q&A session to follow this panel discussion. So your input could animate, could move us to decide on a subject and potentially a direction for the Wakpa Triennial in 2026, which, if you've watched our materials, if you've read our e-blast, connects itself to a commemoration, celebration in some quarters of the semi-quinticentennial. In expectation of that, I don't use the word in anticipation, which I think connotes looking forward to, an expectation of the 250th anniversary of Declaration of Independence, and what that could mean to people who may view it as an occasion for recollection of trauma, rather than perhaps a celebration of statehood and continued potency of this nation called the United States of America. That's what we're thinking about, and that's what these conversations are meant to do. I'd like to, it's my privilege to introduce to you our moderator and co-curator of the Wakpa Triennial, Angela Two Stars. Okay, here goes. Angela Two Stars is a public artist and curator. She is the director of All My Relations Arts, a project of the Native American Community Development Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Angela is an enrolled member of the Sistan, Walkerton, Oyate, and received her BFA from Kendall College of Art and Design. Angela's professional arts career began at All My Relations Art Gallery as an exhibiting artist, which then led to further opportunities, including her first curatorial role for the exhibition titled Bring Her Home, Stolen Daughters of Turtle Island, a powerful exhibition highlighting the ongoing epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Angela's public art graces the shores of the Makaska and honors the Dakota people of Minnesota. Angela was recently selected as the finalist for the Walker Arts Center's Indigenous Public Art Commission which we will work on. Highly accomplished, and we're delighted to have guide our upcoming triennial. And I'm also delighted to welcome 3 distinguished panelists with me. Let me, please permit me to read off there.
I can give you my glass on. It's a reading.
First we have, next to Angela 2 stars, we have Davu Seru, North Minneapolis native. Davu Seru is the curator of the Gibbons Collection of African American Literature and Life at Elmer L. Anderson Library. He is co-author of the book Sights, Sounds, Soul, the Twin Cities Through the Lens of Charles, is it Chambers? And is an award-winning, internationally recognized musician and composer. To Davu's left, we have Iyekiyapiwiņ, then Darlene St. Clair, who is professor at the Department of Organizational Leadership, Policy and Development in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Minnesota. Her work focuses on several areas: Dakota studies, Native nations of Minnesota, the integration of Native cultures, histories and languages into curricula and educational institutes, the arts and cultural expressions of Native peoples, Dakota places and sacred sites, and anti-racist pedagogy. St. Clair is the project lead for the Minnesota Mukherjee curriculum project with the Native nonprofit Dakota Wikoha that is being implemented in 6th grade classrooms across Minnesota. She is the organizer and instructor for the Native Studies Summer Workshop for Educators, and SSWE, a professional development workshop hosted by Native Nations since 2007. She is, forgive me.
The day won't come to one.
Thank you. Dakota, especially Dakota, and a citizen of the Lower Sioux Indian community in Minnesota. And certainly not least, to their left is Dipankar Mukherjee, is the artistic director of Pangea World Theatre, an international theatre in Minneapolis that is a progressive space for arts and dialogue. He is a theatre director originally from Kolkata, India. His aesthetics have evolved through his commitment to social justice, equity, and deep spirituality. As a director, he has worked in India, England, Canada, and the United States. Dipankar received the Humphrey Institute Fellowship to Salzburg, was a Ford Foundation delegate to India and Lebanon, and the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation Fellow at Shangri-La in Hawaii. He was a recipient of the Bush Leadership Fellowship Award to study nonviolence and peace methodologies in India and South Africa. In his rehearsal and workshop practices, Dipankar facilitates processes that work to disrupt colonial, racist, patriarchal modalities that we have inherited and collaboratively searches for an alternative way of working. He was awarded the 2023 McKnight Distinguished Artist Award. Welcome. Panelists are going to chat for no later than 7:15. The welcome to conclude earlier if that feels right. And then we'll take your questions and engage you for at least 15 minutes until 7:30. And then you're welcome to chat us up individually if you'd like. I welcome you coming up and talking to me if you've met me before. My name is Angela. Okay. Welcome. Take it away, Angela.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juan.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the chair here so sit on top of you guys.
All right. Well, I'm just going to jump into it. I don't have to go through all of your bios and do all of that stuff, so we can just jump right into having a talk. I've got to pull up my questions. Let me know if my volume, as much as I'm doing this, I'll still forget to put the microphone up. No. All okay. All right. So Bob and I have been having discussions around the theme for the triennial and letting it kind of flow that time of year, what's going to be happening, how do we shape a theme that is broad enough that artists can interpret it differently. And the first thing that came up was just kind of this discussion of the need to pause. I think especially now in the time that we're in, things feel very overwhelming. I don't know if that's just me, anybody else is feeling that way too. And so we just talked about this need to slow down and what pausing looks like. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you all tonight. So let's just kind of start out with that question. What does pausing look like to you? Let me start. Is that the hardest one?
He's pausing.
Breathing.
Okay.
Trying not to think before thinking. Probably the opposite. Is this? Yeah, she's very lucky. It's probably the opposite of what my impulses tell me to do, which I know we'll get to it, react. Not thinking, but instead remembering that I have a body by being in it. And that isn't just about me. So, yeah, it's not just about my access to a membership at a yoga studio. You know, it's about this body we inhabit together.
Iyekiyapiwiņ, my relatives, Iyekiyapiwiņ, and Darlene St. Clair and Mukherjee. This question, the thing that first came to my mind when you asked this question was, like, what, I think I am somebody who believes that there's really answers to any persistent questions of today by looking at traditional teachings. And I think traditional teachings of lots of communities and lots of practices, but for me, traditional Dakota teachings. So I think one of the things that I thought of is the pausing is really kind of like another way of thinking about reacting and responding, which I think we'll be talking about. And it made me think of like traditional Dakota governance, which there's a couple things that I think are really important. One, in Dakota, there's certainly some things that are very significantly different from the Western or Euro-American thoughts and sort of worldviews. And one is, in Dakota, we have this teaching that there are multiple right answers. And sometimes that's explained, that can be really hard for people who are really ingrained in Euro-American thought because they're like, well, math, there's one answer. But another way of thinking about that, another way it's been explained to me, is there's multiple paths to the same truth. So when I think about like traditional Dakota governance, I think of like the ways that decisions are made in a traditional Dakota community are as what I would call considered decision making. And the considered part is the part where you sit and think on it. Sometimes people will say pray on it. You put tobacco down, you give offerings, you ask for guidance, and you take that time to think through what a response is going to be. And of course, traditional Dakota governance is not even like American democracy that's representational. Traditional Dakota governance would be that whoever's impacted is part of the decision making, and the decision isn't made until people can be of one mind about it. And that is, more in the area of like consensus decision making. Consensus decision making is hard, it's messy, it takes a long time, and of course it requires the consideration part, which means you sort of sit with things. And so when I got asked this question about pausing, and knowing kind of the context that you ask it in, some of it is like all right, Dakota people traditionally, even in a crisis as to what we're existing in right now, would say, okay, let's start thinking about who is impacted by this, by what's happening to us, and let's start thinking in a way of the community about how we might respond or react to that. And that's considered decision making. And of course, the consideration requires individual pausing and thinking, and it requires it done in community as well. So I'm certainly not to say that I don't believe in responding, but I think for me, my teaching is we start with that pause because it gives us time for the consideration that we need to move in a direction that's going to be good for the group, the community, and not just an individual.
Pause is, to me, it's deep listening and trying to, it's a moment of inquiry, accepting that we don't have to have the answers yesterday, and we don't have to immediately Google search for a quick remedy, but just to be, just to be, and trusting that we're surrounded by creative minds and creative people, and we'll be able to have, the truth surfaces, and so giving it the time that it takes. It's vibrant to me. A pause is very vibrant. In Sanskrit, the word shunya means a circle, which is actually zero. And at the same time, shunya also is a circle, which means the cosmos. So to me, just to be present to the zero, even in martial arts, they say be still as a mountain, swift as the wind, present as fire. But they talk a lot about stillness, which is vibrating stillness, and it's also Gandhi. Gandhi talked about stillness when there was a time when we had the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, where we had the community had gathered, and then they just mowed us all down without just because. So there were some other elders who asked him that other people who were fighting for independence. They said, "What do you suggest? Another prayer?" Criticizing him, another silent prayer, and Gandhi said that he has never advocated for passive anything. There is nothing passive about nonviolence, and to me, that really I draw a lot of strength from that. That is to be present, to just pause. But this pause now, to me, it seems so. It lands on my body different from COVID. With the COVID pause, that time, I know we stopped our play production. We lost tons of money. Our first pause was how do we keep our staff together. There were 12 families depending on us and on the theatre. How to keep the families together, how to survive multi-million-dollar organization, let go of their staff, and that was considered to be fiscal integrity, because they let go of staff. But we are in, so that pause and this pause seems very different. This pause really demands much more of a clarity, I feel. So to me, pause is to be okay with not having an immediate answer.
Thank you. I love that comment on multiple paths to the truth. I also, I'm just thinking about the need for self-awareness when it comes to pausing, like what you guys have been sharing, like when you're pausing, you're really inside your own space. And for me, I come from a generation of historical and generational trauma, and so what I have learned about myself just recently, like within the last 2 years, is that need to always be doing something is a trauma response. And so for me to just sit there was really uncomfortable for a long time, and awareness too of like, oh, I can't sit here like trying to get my kids to go off and do stuff, and like, hey, there's like monster truck rally, like, you guys want to go? They're like, no, we're good, we just want to be at home. And I was like, oh, you sure? We're just gonna sit here, like, it's a Saturday, we're just gonna like sit here? And so I really had to come to like a self-awareness and like an acceptance of my own trauma of having to sit still and pause and come to a healing with that. That was really interesting. I'm just talking a little bit. But I mean, that could lead into, the next question on that's like taking stock of who we are, of your work, of your life, of your family, and kind of the importance of doing that in those moments of pause. Do you want to share any of that? First of all, let's talk about how you got here to where you're at, and then we'll go into that question of taking stock of yourself. So, who wants to start with sharing how you got here to this place, to this profession, to this land?
I was telling Darlene is a professor and knows.
I sat here because Davu would be first. He's next to the moderator, so I counted on everyone first.
I'm arriving.
You're arriving? Oh, okay.
Thanks to my ancestors. Need a lot of help. There's been a lot of activity around archiving since COVID. Fever around archiving since COVID. And I gather that that's often associated with deep anxiety and great uncertainty about the present moment. And we sort of, generate a lot of activity, nervous energy around remembering. In part because it feels good to gather up like this, because remembering only happens when you actually do things like this. The insights that I might have on my own are only so good. They're only so useful. And so since COVID, I have been called to do a lot of work with others to document the history of Black Minnesota, which my family keeps coming up as people who arrived here, fugitive slaves from Virginia in 1862 on the river, not far from Vidote, and so not far from Mankato. And no, it was a black man who sold out to Dakota. Amen. And so as my family comes, refugees on the move, I just gave a talk in Mankato, where I went to the memorial and announced that I was there and that my ancestors had sent me. And I said, thank you. And then walked back up to the library and told some stories and played drums. And I talked about my family and their arriving here and what we've been gathering about the stories of these black families who come up out of slavery and land in these river towns on the river. Going back into sort of the history of Hastings, which is where we landed, was since the 1850s. Before we were chased away into the cities, where we would make community here. And so I'm arriving in that context. I'm arriving in after the 60s on the north side. And my parents' generation, what they would experience after Dr. King's assassination, and what it would mean to grow up in a neighborhood on the north side where the police eventually looked like the military. And somebody dumped crack cocaine in our neighborhoods. And so trauma helps. Trauma helps us some, to, I think, for me at least, makes sense. Well, it invites me to some laws periodically, every moment I can.
So I'm Dakota. I'm from here. From here. Some of my ancestors lived at Pangea, which is a village that is in here, what would be later St. Paul. So really from this area originally. How I got to be in this profession is I did not grow up trying to pretend to be a teacher or playing school or anything like that. I think for many, not all, for many Native people, they have a really challenging relationship with white education, American systems of education that have been really harmful. I'm the first generation of my family not to go to a boarding school. My dad went to Pipestone Indian School. And so I didn't say, I want to be a teacher. Because with so many professions, it's somebody else in your life that does it and it inspires you and you see what it's like to do that job. So that was not an intention. I wanted to work in an art museum because I had my great uncle was an artist and he primarily painted scenes of like Indians and wildlife on the Lower Sioux Reservation, and primarily sold this work to tourists, so white tourists who would come through the community and they would want to have an example of Indian art or something like that. So he was very influential. I used to watch him paint. And of course my auntie taught me to do beadwork, and so I had access, but I was never good at drawing, so I thought I would not be an artist. But I loved art so much that I studied art history. And I think my intention was to like we have a little museum on our reservation. I thought maybe I'd work there, or I'd wanted to work in an art museum and work with Native arts there. And it just kind of didn't go in that direction. I ended up in grad school teaching a class as a grad student, and I found like such rewarding experiences. And that's kind of the path that I took, but it was not my intention, and it was certainly not the thing that I would have thought, because I'm also a very strong introvert. And so I would have, just the being on stage takes a lot of energy and focus, and I just thought I want to be in the background of things. But I have found that being a teacher feeds me in a way nothing else has. So I have really been an educator for really the bulk of my professional career. And I do teach about art, and Native arts in particular, which is something I love tremendously. So I think the other thing that was really directed my path is, so for Dakota people, when you're born, you just have everybody has a Dakota name. And the name is like firstborn girl or thirdborn boy. It's like a birth order name. So everyone has a Dakota name. And I'm the second-born girl in my family. So my whole young life, I had a Dakota name. But when I was a young adult in college, my family arranged for me to get a new name. And that is something that can happen to Dakota people. I might get another different name at some point in my life. But I got a new name, and I was not a baby when I got that name, so it was something I was around for, and I have a conscious memory of. So I was in college, and a spiritual leader prays, and they receive a name. and there's a ceremony around it. And so I was there and present for that, and the man who named me, of course, he didn't pick the name. The name came from the Creator, but he just told me what it was. And he said, this is your name now, and you need to take this seriously. And so it's Iyekiyapiwiņ, which I use often, not as my only name, but one of my really important names. But the main thing for a lot of Native people is when you get a Native name, we are told that it helps kind of guide you or helps you make decisions or helps, maybe it's a pathway that you would take. And so in Dakota, Iyekiyapiwiņ means recognized woman. And that's kind of weird because it's not a very good translation to translate it just straight to English. Because it does not, I think of recognized in the context of the United States as being like a celebrity or standing out, right? But that isn't what it means in Dakota. In Dakota, it means essentially seeing things for what they are. Like, I recognize this is a glass that's holding water. So it does not mean that I'm standing out from anybody at all. It means that at least maybe something I needed to work on or a pathway for me or something that I need to be conscious of in my life going forward is the seeing things for what they are effort. So that also has had a really big impact on my pathway and who I've become as a human being.
I love what you said, Darlene, we arrive as immigrants and keep arriving. You never know where we drop the anchor. The only thing, I'm originally from India, so I'm the other Indian. Bad joke. I'm originally from India, and I came here. I did most of my studies abroad because I was very colonized. Never thought of going to other Asian countries, but had to get commendations from England. The Queen, as if she cares. But your mind is so colonized for a long time, and then I was recruited here. I came to the Guthrie and I was there for a few years, and I was just telling Davu how I met Seru. He was the education person in the Walker, and I was at the Guthrie, and I don't understand why everybody kept asking me, have you met Seru? Have you met Seru? And everybody was asking him, have you met Dipankar? We're two different organizations. So I remember, so months passed, and everybody only asked me that question. Not, have I met anybody else? So then months passed, and I was just, walking down in front of the bookshop. That time it was an old building, Walker and Guthrie were the same time. So then suddenly I saw one person of color after 3 months, then coming down the stairs.
The escalator.
Seru said, hey man, what's happening in your plantation? And I just knew, I said, it must be Seru. I've been told about you forever. So, it's, so we come as immigrants and we come to answer that question, how do we arrive? We arrive, and on the shoulders of people like Seru, elders, Bill Cockman, Jay Otis, Sharon Day, Marcy Rendon. So we arrive in this land, acknowledging the land on which we are standing, and we are so clear that we didn't begin where we didn't individually begin the river, and we step into the river. So the answer is culturally, spiritually, artistically. Maybe we have all this training, etc. I'm a theatre director. I direct plays I came out of, and what has shaped how I have arrived artistically is really the politics has shaped us. Every bit of the politics has constantly shaped and reshaped the mission of our theatre and the work that we do. With the what you said, Darlene, believing in multiple, streams, what we call the pluriverse, and that's why we call that theatre Pangea. Pan is all, and Gaia, goddess of the earth, and I really see that as the future. The only way forward is collaborative politics. And that's why we were very clear that we want to stand in the center of intersectionality. And to me, that's where I draw my strength from.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you both, that part of the work that I'm doing now is about, and I know a lot of the people doing this work, is to allow folks to see how we're connected, how the connections, drawing that line for them. Setu Jones is my mentor. Mahmoud El-Kati, his teacher, came to North High when I was a student there in high school and taught us. There is this continuity. The collection that I'm responsible for at the University of Minnesota was brought there by my teacher, John S. Wright,
Yes.
who I studied with in graduate school. It was a product of the Moral Hall Takeover, which was black students at the University of Minnesota's response to Dr. King's assassination and what they had been enduring at the university. And so I owe so much to that generation, but we don't know. And people are always arriving and coming, and it gets difficult to see the people who had been there already, right? And so this work that a lot of us are doing, I think, is to, and it's so for the first time, given how powerful white supremacy has, has been, or the people who think they are white supremacists have been, is that it seems like it's just either we are arriving again at work that people already did but wasn't documented very well, or our institutions weren't big enough, and it sort of ends up in the bottom of a Halloween box in the basement at MNHS, or we just never took up the work because we didn't want to have to repeat things that were painful. And that I'm a lot of our artistic practice, because it so begins with what I know best, and that's my family, and my neighborhood, and my city, etc. It's relational, and you have to come up against often really painful stuff and hurt people all over again. And so it does take time. It takes a lot of time to continue arriving in this way.
Thank you for sharing. I have a funny side note on the name discussion that you were sharing. My youngest son's name is John. I was like, how many Johns are in the room? There's a lot of Johns. He was named after his ancestor from Germany, Johann, so he's John. And he said to us, "Mom, why don't you call me John?" Everybody's John. But actually for me, I would always call him Pangea, because ever since he was a baby, he would run around with one sock or one shoe on. Just always one sock or one shoe. So I just started calling him Pangea. So that's his little Dakota nickname I have for him. And I was thinking with him, I was like, this, that's my name for him as a toddler, young child. And then as he gets older, he's going to get a different name, as he kind of comes into who he is, and then he'll get that Dakota name. And even then it could change. And I thought, that is so cool that, as parents, you pick a name for your child, and that's their name. I hope she's an Emily, that's her name moving on. But with Dakota, your name can change because you've changed, and I just think that's something so cool. It's a little bit off topic on what we're doing, but I just thought that was really fun. Maybe think about that. So let's see. I think my follow-up question to your guys' reflection was the importance of taking stock of where you're at now, how you got here, your work tonight.
To me, the best answer I can give you to the question, how are you doing, is to remember my day. Small scale. Because we are not doing very well right now. And then when I slow down to think, remember how I woke up, did that first cup of coffee was, first cup of water. Nope, I didn't get hurt. I 3 square meals. I talked to my mom. I talked to my great auntie. I made people happy with my work. There are some things that didn't happen that I wish had happened. But I think it helps for me to just stop it, just look at the day again. Just have to be really small scale.
I think that taking stock is a really hard question. I don't think I do know. I haven't taken stock, or it's not accurate. Of course, you referenced like the worst or the hardest question is how are you doing right now? Because it would be a lie to say fine, but it's not like I'm falling apart either. So it's like such a complicated answer. And so one of the things that I've been thinking of is in English we say good morning. It's sort of like it's a typical greeting. We say it so often it kind of is like just comes out of your mouth without really any intention. And in Dakota we have sort of you start hearing Dakota people say "Hahana washte," good morning. They say it just like that. But that isn't what we would have said traditionally. At least what I was told was that we would have said, or like the intention would have been, "Deampetu kinde, deampetu washtekte," meaning it's going to be a good day. It isn't even it's a good day. It has this future thing, like it's going to be a good day because you're intending, you're setting it out that it's going to be a good day. That something in today is going to be worth getting out of bed, or worth doing what you're doing, worth the effort, worth the investment that you're making. And so I think that has really had a big impact on me. Is like no one deserves a good day. We set out to sort of make it good. We be one part of a whole community that's going to make it as good as we can. And so that sort of holds. That teaching is something that's been really helpful for me. But honestly, if you were to say, how do you take stock? I don't think I do a good job. And in fact, in the moment, I might think this is where I'm at, and then I ponder on it, and I look back on it after some time, and I'm like, well, that was delusional, So I think I'm not good at it, but I'm more like, let's just move forward in the day and try to do what you can to contribute. And so I'm very fortunate to have a job that I get to do work that I believe in and I think is good and contributes to the world. And it doesn't always go perfectly, and it's not always successful. And there's some other aspects of my work that I like less. But when I focus on like how lucky I am to do things that I sort of stand behind and believe in, it's not hard to say Deampetu washtekte. It's going to be a good day because I get to do things that I think are important and meaningful. So.
Taking stock. Pause. You first asked us. We began with pause. Pause is a place of arrival. We can't begin there. We arrive at pause. And taking stock. I have two. I'm a theatre director. I've got two directing mentees. One is Ismail Khalidi, who's a Palestinian American, on my left. And I have got Sir Kirby, the third, who is Ojibwe and black. Now that answers the question, right? If I'm deeply listening to both of them. So to me, taking stock is not. Just deeply listening to the realities of what's going on in their land, in Gaza, and what's going on with the present, constant, executive orders that, I mean, how do you satirize a satire? I mean, that's my search. I mean, so taking stock is deeply listening to me, deeply listening, and realizing that don't have to act immediately, but we need to. But I definitely feel that our theatre, my art, has to step up. I've got so many interns who are trans. We have people in the LGBTQ community in our board, in our staff, on the choices of literature, on stage. So sometimes taking stock is just that's what is, that's what is in every day in our space, and who's most vulnerable, and the intentional desire to keep us off balance, right? It's not today I introduce A, we have time to discuss A, tomorrow I introduce G, day after tomorrow I introduce L. So, and once you see the pattern, and you see that the intention is to keep us off balance, to find a centrality of balance and breath and exhale, is what we're trying, because we have to be healthy in order to stand in solidarity with our other, colleagues. So cannot afford to have a nervous breakdown, even though every bit of your nerve is frayed. But I think consciously remaining healthy, we do yoga, we breathe, we do pranayama, we listen to elders, and Darlene, you and both Davu, you were talking about elders, and to me, my elders, I've mentioned Sharon Day. Whenever I look at my African American friends and elders, and I look at my Indigenous friends and elders, and sometimes my friends in Mississippi say, "Man, it was always like this. What are you getting so off kilter? Do you think it matters who won the election?" So I draw strength from that, and Sharon Day would tell me that when she's a part of the spook generation, and her mother would always, by putting them to bed at night, would always whisper to each one of the young kids that tomorrow will be a slightly better day. I just love that. That imagine your mother whispers a secret before you go to bed, and she said, and so she went to sleep with that, and so that's what I tell myself, that, today a moron has signed another moronic thing. Tomorrow intelligence will prevail. And I keep saying that till it arrives.
You brought up your line of your offering led me at least to thinking about reactivity, the question about not reacting, or the potential dangers of reacting and why we pause. And I thought about how, I learned a lot, I'm learning a lot from my childhood. We all are, but if you're courageous enough to, go there. Pausing is not freezing.
No. Yes.
In response to trauma that I'm familiar with. It's not the same. But at the same time, I feel like, again, the traumatic experiences that you might remember from, say, childhood, about how do you stay safe? How do I stay safe when there's so much chaos and unpredictability? And it seems to be that it's all coming at you from a group that is identified as a group. In my case, it was the street gang, the police, right? They all had color and symbols, and they had a code, and we were the civilians under threat. And a threat that would often pass. They would often just pass. And we got through it.
Yes.
May 2020 is University I live in Frogtown, not far from right? And I'm up all night on my front porch with a gun, scared. And something happened where I remembered somehow that feeling, the feeling I was having, and that I've been here before. You know, we can do that. I mean, we can do that if we've had, remember that you've been there before and that you got through it somehow. And the one thing that I wish had happened, though, when I was a kid, okay, what do I have now that my parents didn't have? That they could have given me, that I wish I had back then. And that was the adults were confident themselves enough that they could come to you and say, everything's going to be all right, we got you. They weren't that confident in what was happening around them. And so the first thing I did was run my son's room. I said, we got you. Shit's crazy right now, but we got you. This is going to pass.
Yes.
And it's going to be possible because we're together. And you're not alone. You're connected to something. Let's tell stories.
Yes.
You're not alone.
Yes.
How impactful that was for him.
We'll see.
Yeah.
16.
I appreciate, it kind of feels like a big question, like when you're taking stock of, let's look at my entire life. But really it's like, just in the day, like the intention of it's going to be a good day. Or you just, as you were sharing, I was thinking about like, I do that. I take stock because it's like, I really liked that podcast. That was really funny today. Or that was a really good meeting, and I just enjoyed that conversation that we had. And all of that to me is that's taking stock in the little things. And then at the end of the day, like that is that intention of the good day that you started out with that intention to have. That's wonderful.
Taking a puppy or a actually, it really is a deeply spiritual exercise. Taking this living being, for a walk who does not care about your politics. Stretches out and sleeps. Regardless of what happens in the day, there is so much. It's constantly teaching.
Yeah.
And when I'm getting all this convoluted about what's happening, and I just look at him. They're just happy to exist. I'm just saying because I just saw Angela Tusta's tiny little puppy, just such a small one. It just fills your soul. That makes me take stock. And they're so much more intelligent than us, these beings. And they constantly tell you something that is not worth getting all so twisted.
Yeah, well, let's go into that and talk about the reactivity. Let's talk about the dangers of reactivity and how to counter that.
Had I reacted to every prompt, every test of my manhood as a young boy, just trying to get home from school, had I stood up to every, test, I wouldn't be here. Had I not taken the advice given to me by elders in my community when the police tested us, I might not be here. I don't like being in the position of having to be the one not reacting. I take it personally that you put me here. In this position where I now have to decide whether or not I'm going to put my hands on you, or if I'm going to. This feels like a personal affront, but for some people that is the law of the natural order of things, to move around trying to dominate people in the world. Europeans didn't invent that; they just got really good at it. And the danger is, again, you're just losing. For me as a kid, the thing I always did, feel like I'm just speaking for every nerd and everything imaginable, but you get used to thinking, being able to see that what they're doing is wrong. That's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, without schooling, without anything, you know it's wrong. Right? You can trust you. You're not always sure whether you can trust your gut, though. You get confused about being scared and all that stuff, but it's we know, you know, we know that it's wrong, and I think that slowing down, trust the little paths, you'll get home. And that's what you're trying to do. Just return home safely. Take his breath, to, you know, literally, you know, advance.
So, again, the West has this what I call Western dualism. Yes, no, true, false, black, white. And again, I'm going to complicate this because I think pausing is a reaction. Pausing is a decision. Pausing is a choice. Pausing, there's a reason to do it with intention behind it. But it doesn't mean that I don't think that there are reactions that are not appropriate. I think part of it is, I don't always know. I think the best way to come to reactions is to do it in community. I certainly believe in self-reflection and thinking a lot about where is this feeling, where is this sticking with me, I'll just, even as a child, I'll be like, why do I have a bad feeling? And like make myself kind of like draw the line as to why that is. And I find that sometimes the reaction is putting tobacco down and asking for guidance. Sometimes the reaction is smudging. Sometimes the reaction is to calling a friend or a relative where you can really vent in a really safe space and sort of get some of that out there so that it really takes some of the power that it has over you kind of gets smoothed out, the edges. But I also believe in reacting. And I think the reactions in the moment that we're in right now are best to come to through community. And I think that's the part that we are still working on. Because unfortunately, the kind of individualism that American society is sort of imbued with really doesn't serve us. It's not real in the world. No one lives with all by themselves with no anybody else. And in fact, in Dakota, we would say, Iyekiyapiwiņ, Oasi, all my relatives, and then we're talking about all of creation. And if you're responding to creation as if it's your relative, then even the beings that you're thinking of are not even just human beings. You're really thinking about what are the impacts of these decisions on all of creation? What are the impacts of these decisions on the land, on the water? And so we do have a lot to consider, as we're working to come up with reactions. But I think that that's always best done in community.
Yeah, I really, the pluriverse that you're born into, the network that we are born into, you don't really have to create one. We are born into a network. I really believe in Noam Chomsky, whom I deeply respect, said that this individualism is an outcome of a conscious design. It is designed for us to be separated. It is designed for us, to feel hopeless, helpless, fear. It's not by chance that this is happening and therefore I feel fear. It's a conscious design. And once we get it, once we really get that, so that's why I love the word critical. How would this title be different if it was called Conversations? Sitting over here, and having a conversation. And critical time demands critical conversation, nuanced thinking, and elders have shown the path. And I really think, just like, Ricardo Morales, I was talking to him, he said, toxin is not a bad word. We have good toxins in our body and we have bad toxins in our body. We need We need both. And the good toxins is healthy. Bad toxins you purge, So reaction against, this trivial insult, you insult, go back home. We don't need to go down the list, especially when I'm sitting down with Indigenous and Black relatives here. So those comments, so the comments like, which you just do this and you keep walking. And the also reaction is also like what Darlene said, is knowing that's what it is, but building solidarity. I feel building solidarity with threads of steel, is the demand of this time, and collaborative politics, and so that places where my trans friends cannot step up and say, hey, this is my politics, and we do, and so I think that is where what we feel is the need, just like what both of you said. Like, yes, individual rootedness, but actually when you use the word root, the roots are all connected. So it's not an individual tree that is on an individual soil, an individual water, with an individual sunlight. There is nothing individual in nature. And so I think that genuinely, truly authentic community. That's why I always laugh when I first came in this city and I worked in a place where they said it was I refused to participate in that. They said, we are going to create a task force to create community. I said, if you have to create a task force to create community, is failure written in it from point zero. If I will not get in touch with Darlene because there's a task force, I will get in touch with Darlene because I want Darlene and Davu to come home and I'll cook and then they better cook and then we'll eat. So I think that's where lies my strength or my fear gets abated. I'm not minimizing what's being spoken, by Davu and by Darlene, but I just feel I have to exhale. And I feel that when 10 people are making decisions, and I feel we have to be in commune, when we use the word community. And I feel sometimes we pontificate about community in a very powerful way, when we make lectures, but we don't know the name of the person who's sitting 6 inches away from us. And it's high time those barriers have to break. And so that, Davu's problem is my problem, and Darlene's problem is Davu's problem and my problem. And if we come together, we saw that post Brother Floyd's murder, right? The street had intergenerational, interracial, we were a voice that could not be ignored, and I think a call has come for us, but it's good to really see the pause. That I love the power of that first question. So I think reaction does not always have to be against, but reaction also has to be stitched. Like I will see that my water connects with Darlene's and yours and Davu's, and that's where the strength.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, maybe. Do you guys have any on here that you're like, oh, I want to ask that question? Was there one that stood out and was like, I hope we get to that question?
I should have read all the questions. Where do you find joy?
Yes, that was going to be my end. Do you have one more?
It's the same.
Answer. Same answer.
I was on a panel last week. You were talking about guns and kind of on the civil rights struggle, and talked a lot about violence, fear, pausing as activity, nonviolent resistance. And at the end, they asked, "Book recommendations." I said no, and I work in an archive. My house is full of books. I said I would instead, and this is where I find joy, I would instead you surround yourself with the trees that they come from. You go into the woods somewhere, you find some trees, and you feel the breeze on your skin. And as Richard Pryor, as his character Mudbone would say, you get some sunshine on your face. That's where I get joy. That's where I'm allowed to remember and take a pause for me, a selfish pause that hopefully is meaningful to other people.
I find joy all the time, every day. I'm not having a problem finding joy. It's certainly complicated. It's not by what's going on, but I mean, we've had bad times before, and in fact, much, much worse times. So I'm finding joy because I know that that's something that will fuel me to keep moving forward. I think not finding joy is actually what they would want. That we are so derailed by the chaos that we can't care anymore, even about the things that bring us joy typically. So I'm finding joy, and I look out my window and I marvel at all the amazing things that are just outside, and go for a walk every day, and laugh with friends and family, and that's a thing that I will protect to the end, is to make sure that I find space for joy. And so that's keeping me centered.
I just love life. I just love every second of my life, especially after losing so many elders, post-COVID, and so many of our elders are passing on because of this age. I'm very clear about we are here for a very short time, and people whom I love and respect, they're getting up there, and so I'm just going to extract every second of my life, and I will not, hand it over to any politician. My joy, and just eating together, music. Davu didn't mention what a brilliant musician he is. I remember him creating magic in my studio with Jyotis Babu, who's an ancestor now. I was telling Jyotis that it's such a small studio, and you're bringing this whole band, and Davu is with his drum. He said, "You haven't seen drum play, have you?" And man, control sound. He's a brilliant musician. So people like that, and are in our lives, and elders need to be protected, and youngsters need to be given a megaphone, and those are my clear goals in life, and I love my life. And so that's where I find joy, and no politician, many politicians have not yet been born will take my joy away.
All right, now we have audience questions, right? Anybody from the audience have any questions? Oh.
Thank you. I'm Kathleen, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight. And I have more of an addition than a question. These are wonderful questions, and the conversation has been incredible. And I think, Dipankar, you were talking about, with that question about pausing and yoga and meditation, and something that I have been thinking about a lot with the force with which things have been happening and coming at us, is that in yoga and in meditation practices, we talk about the soft gaze, and that we're not looking directly at something and focusing at a single thing, but we We soften our gaze so that we can see all around us, above, below, and it's soft. So we're aware, but softly, and we're not directing our attention at the latest thing as it comes. And I find that very powerful in creating, centering myself with this crazy time. Oops.
Thank you for that. And that, just like pausing is not freezing, is not the same thing as being scared and not making eye contact.
Yeah.
Thinking about men that I know because they grew up in an environment like I did, will never make eye contact and always looking into some neutral spot where they're not going to, be exposed to threats.
Yeah.
That's a different,
that's
a different burden. No, the soft gate is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may. This question is for Dipankar. Yoga's come up more than once tonight, and I think of it as a pretty pervasive Indian export, if you will, one that has been picked up with fervor throughout the world. Do you remember several years ago when there was a trend of laughter clubs?
Yes.
Why do you think that never took off in the Western world? The way yoga did.
Sorry. Laughter, it's interesting, right? Laughter, and laughter, when we would go for a run, we would see these groups of people who are practicing laughter. You just look at them and you start laughing. It takes guts. Actually, John Osborne, American playwright who wrote this brilliant play called Look Back in Anger, there's a line here that says, it really takes guts. It takes guts to truly relax. And I never understood what that meant. And in college, of course, you know everything, so you say, what the hell does that mean, But I have realized that it takes real guts to genuinely relax. So I think, that laughter is just giving up. And it's like liberatory, right? Mm-hmm. And that has not, I agree, I've never thought of that. Why has it not taken off? Because people, when we had to make a presentation at the Bush Foundation, when I came, everybody was presenting, everybody comes and presents your vision, and you feel that you are lost among 10,000 people. And then, so when I came and said, I want to study peace, everybody just burst out laughing. And I said, if I had come and said over here that I want to study modes of violence, none of you would have laughed. Because I said I want to study peace, it's a joke. So maybe that's why laughter is considered to be maybe less serious, less trivial, more trivial. I don't know, because I think even I've seen these groups of elderly people in parks just laughing loudly, and the more they, and it's contagious, when somebody else is laughing with a hand thrown up, and I wanted to find them funny, but actually seeing them laugh, you start laughing. I'm going to think about that. Why did it take off?
I don't know. I would look to popular culture, comedy clubs, comedy specials. You look at these comedy specials, those rooms are full of people who go there to laugh. Catharsis. That's what they're looking for. It's not wholesome. It's not necessarily wholesome, but but I think people, they know the power, right?
Thank you all. I really love hearing what you've been saying. And you talked about taking time to be grounded and intentional and kind of building resilience. And in these times, it feels like all of that is important, so that then one can figure out how to respond to what's happening and how to have some sort of influence that moves the needle back in a more positive direction. And I've really been trying to be sort of sitting and watching and thinking and trying to figure out what that looks like that will be effective. When so much of our country seems to be on really different pages about how we're working as a nation, how we're working with one another, and so how do we figure out how to have conversations that mean we're not maybe quite as far apart in our perception of things. And so I was curious what you think this next thing looks like as a nation as we're dealing with what we're dealing with right now. And I know that's not what we came here, but you all seem really wise, so.
When I apply for a job, will you write me?
Yeah.
That's what the search, I think, isn't it? I mean, that's what I feel, that, and it's a search, it's a communal search. No individual, I think, the primary example about why this celebrity individual culture, this idea of looking at one person, the celebrity, I think this will crumble, and I think this communal search, like your question, we may not have answers, other people might have answers, and I really believe that will keep us buoyant. It's not a one-word answer, but we'll arrive at sanity because we are hopefully sane. What a stupid thing to say. But because sanity will prevail. Sanity has to prevail. Logic has to prevail because humanity has to prevail. Because doing away with sections and sections and sections of humanity is not practical. It's not practical. I mean, where will we go? But yeah, so I think when we together, it's okay not to have an immediate answer, and to be okay with not having an answer now, but we will arrive at an answer because we belong to an intelligent community, and listening to you, what you have to say, with your concern, your fear, somebody else's concern, somebody else's fear, and then elders have shown the path, and I'm confident. Gandhi has said, in the history of mankind, in the history of time, no dictator has outlasted time. No dictator. So I believe and trust that.
I don't know that I have a direct answer. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is so Dakota people who have this sort of foundational is this concept of everything or everyone, all of creation is my relative. And of course that does include other human beings. And even in our biological family, we have relatives we don't care for. We don't want to. They drive us crazy. You're just waiting for something that come out of their mouth that's going to make you mad. So it's but I still think of affirming people's humanity, even if what they stand for is diametrically opposed to what I'm standing for. And I think similarly, in the long run, that tenet of in Dakota we say to be a good Dakota is to be a good relative. So that's a pretty strong teaching that I think all Dakota people heard many, many times and to be a good relative, it doesn't need to be nice. And I think that's the difference. Nice is not, a good relative an aunt tells their nephew something that they don't want to hear and maybe is being the bearer of news that they don't care to hear or getting after someone or helping someone see that what they did was harmful. And I think, so I still think of, really affirming people's humanity and trying to be a good relative. But I just want to make sure it's clear to understand, I don't mean agreeing with people or just nodding or being nice. It's really about what would they have to do, or how can I support them to be who they need to be, or to go down that path, the path that they need to be on. How can I support them in living into the fullness of their own humanity? And we have a concept about that as well, Iyekiyapiwiń, which is common person. And for a common person is not like a peasant, which I think it sounds like in English. It's like commoner. It doesn't mean that. The teaching is that we strive to become a common person. We struggle to become a common person, because a common person is somebody who's living into the fullness of their humanity. And to live in the fullness of your humanity, that's not easy, because that means that you're thinking about, well, have I dehumanized others? Have I impacted the humanity of other people? I got to deal with that. Or have I been dehumanized, either personally or historically? Have I been dehumanized? You got to deal with that. So becoming a common person is really like a lifelong effort. And so I think, what I think about is these Dakota teachings of it's laid out for us. We receive the teachings. But it doesn't mean just because you have some guidance doesn't mean the work gets done for you. So I think now for me, it's more about how do I do the work in community that based on the guidance and the direction that I've been given from ancestors and in my current family as well, my current human family, current family of creation. So.
In the arts, I just want to add that we are all artists, many of us in front of you, in some form or the other. So through the arts is my search, which is at least every evening, like I'm doing Ernesto's Rhinoceros, which he had written at the rise of fascism. So every page is more current than ever. But every evening, 150 people will come like this, and we'll have post-performance discussions, and we'll search for sanity, we'll search for answers, so that history does not repeat itself. And through the arts we find our politics, in conversation with community, because that's my religion, that's my faith, that's my search, and maybe through the arts we arrive at clarity, maybe.
I don't know. But I believe that I try to connect with everybody I encounter, and dog and cat. It doesn't feel like hard work to me. I know that that's really hard for a lot of people. And I'm careful not to overexert myself with some people, like my dad. Family. Who voted for Trump 3 times. He's black. But I know what happened to him. But I'm not his therapist. I'm his son and his friend sometimes. I'm in a relationship already. I'm worried about how hard it over some people have become because they're scared. They become painful.
I'm a very hopeful person. I just thrive on hope. That's been my biggest, I hope for good things. I hope the people that need to step up are going to step up. And I hope that I can make impact in the gifts that I have, which is different than the gifts my mom has, or, my siblings, So everybody shows up in different ways, and that is the gift that they have that they can offer to the challenges that we face. If you have me do your audit, no. My mom would, knock that out of the park though. Did not pass that gene on to me. So I know that is not my strength. So, and I remember, during, after George Floyd was murdered, there was people that were there at the front lines at night, protecting, and I remember kind of feeling bad, I can't do that. My kids are at home, and that's just not my role, that's not my space to be in. But I was there in the morning, taking in donations, and I saw the people that were showing up in these different ways. Not everybody could be at the front lines, but they were all showing up in the strengths of their own to help in that situation. And so for me, that was hope to see that. And I wish it didn't take a catastrophe, or a horrible murder to happen for everybody to come together around something like that. I wish it wasn't, because we have what we have right now, that we could just be like that all the time.
Yes.
And maybe we do by just doing the little things in the day, because and that is what kind of this conversation is about too. Is pause is also addressing time. The time you spend. Pause. Be present. To be aware. So yeah, I guess that's my own. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think people can talk to everybody afterwards.
Thank you very much for coming. I'd be remiss. Thank you to our distinguished panelists. Thank you to Angela for moderating. We really appreciated your input, your insights. I'd be remiss not to thank the Minnesota Humanities Center for fully funding the Critical Conversation series. It seemed appropriate that we locate our first conversation at the Minnesota Humanities Center. Please be on the lookout later this week for an announcement of the date of the second conversation. It'll be March 24th or 27th, one of the two at Rondo Library, moderated by Bob Cozzolino, the other curator of the Wakba Triennial, and whose subject will be centered on language, particularly Indigenous language. And the subjects for the 3rd and 4th to take place in the months of April and May are yet to be decided. Perhaps tonight's conversation will inform those topicalities. Finally, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Do it again sometime.